All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's live cooking demonstration. My name is Ryan Smith. I'm the Wellness Program Administrator with Employee Development and Wellness Services at Georgia State University. By trade, I am a registered dietitian, so I have all sorts of fun dabbling in nutrition and food. Before we get started, I did want to cover a couple quick things. We're using the WebEx platform today. You may notice that this session is being recorded. We recorded so that you can watch it again later at another time if you want to cook alongside me, or so you can share it with a colleague who may have missed it. All of our sessions are now being uploaded to our YouTube channel, which we'll be sure to send a link to in a follow-up email we'll send out. So if you're interested in seeing previous cooking demonstrations, meditation and yoga exercises, workouts, and more, you should check out that YouTube channel. Now, throughout today's presentation, if you've got any questions, any comments, maybe tips for other people in the audience about how you might substitute an ingredient or go about making a change to the recipe, we'd love to hear it. Please post all your questions and comments in the comment or the chat box section of WebEx. It should be on the right side of your screen. At the end of today's presentation, we'll be sure to go through all those comments and address them. Now, today we are going to be making Mediterranean wraps with homemade hummus. I absolutely love this recipe. 2 weeks ago, we did some black bean queso wraps, and they were pretty popular. People seem to like them. I think wraps are great because they're so easy to customize and make your own, and they're also pretty quick to cook. And when we're looking for a fast meal prep option that can keep us feeling healthy and sustained throughout the week, wraps are a really good way to go about that. So with these wraps, it's a little different than 2 weeks ago. We actually are not going to have to use any heat today. Everything is going to be cold prepped, which makes it nice and simple in terms of equipment and appliances. If you are working with a kitchen or an area that may not have access to a stovetop or anything like that, you don't have to worry. This is pretty much all just chopping and assembling. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make that homemade hummus. If you're not familiar with hummus, hummus is basically a kind of spread that you might put on crackers or vegetables, or in this case, inside of wraps. It's really, really tasty, and it's made with chickpeas or garbanzo beans. So I've got a can of garbanzo beans or chickpeas right here. They're the same thing, just two different names. And I've gone ahead and rinsed and drained those so they are ready to go in the bowl there. I'm just using a standard can size. It's about 15 ounces of canned chickpeas. Now, you can certainly buy store-bought hummus if you want to speed up this process. There are lots of options out there. If you make your own hummus, it's fun because you can add in your own flavors and spices and seasonings to kind of make it unique. It also, I think, tastes fresher whenever you do make it yourself at home. The store-bought stuff is also delicious, but there's something different about making it yourself. So we're going to be taking the homemade route today, but if you're really trying to save time, feel free to buy some store-bought hummus and you can skip this initial step. In terms of equipment for making the hummus, I'm going to be making use of a small food processor. Ones this size are really affordable if you don't have one, and they have so many different uses. I absolutely love mine. If you don't have a food processor, you can make use of a blender as well. The main difference between a blender and a food processor is the blender, those blades are located mainly on the bottom and a little smaller. The food processor is set up to really kind of get everything in a horizontal fashion. So if you're using a blender, you may need to use a spatula in between blending and kind of push things down closer to the base to get it all smooth. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to put this bowl of chickpeas into the food processor back here. And again, that's just a full can that I've rinsed and drained. Now, hummus typically has a couple key ingredients. It's going to have chickpeas, which we've just added. It's going to have lemon juice. So I'm adding 3 tablespoons of lemon juice here. Feel free to use fresh. I'm just using bottled today to keep it simple. But if you really want that fresh tasting homemade hummus, a fresh squeezed lemon is going to make a difference. So 3 tablespoons of lemon juice going in. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. So I've got my olive oil here. And with these being Mediterranean wraps, olive oil is definitely kind of a signature flavor. It's that heart-healthy fat that we love to use whenever we're doing Mediterranean-style dishes. 2 tablespoons of olive oil going in there. Now, in terms of seasoning, we're going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. A little goes a long way, so we'll use a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. We want to keep the salt to a minimum so that we can keep it heart healthy. The black pepper, though, feel free to use as much as you'd like. If you're someone who really enjoys it, go ahead and put in some extra if you want to. So we've got lemon juice, chickpeas, the olive oil, the salt, and the pepper. We've got a few more flavor add-ins. We're going to add some minced garlic. Garlic is a key component of most hummuses. And if you want to make it extra garlicky, go for it. The recipe calls for 1 clove if you want to use fresh. Or if you're using minced garlic, 1 clove is equal to half a teaspoon. Now, I am a big fan of garlic, so I'm going to do a pretty heaping half of a teaspoon here. You'll see it kind of overflowing because I really enjoy the flavor that it brings. So we'll add that in. All right. And then the last key ingredient is something called tahini. Now, if you haven't made hummus before or you don't do a lot of Middle Eastern or Mediterranean cooking, you may not be familiar with tahini. It sounds like kind of an exotic thing, but it's actually not that complicated. If you've had peanut butter before, this is basically the sesame seed equivalent. So peanut butter are made with peanuts, and then tahini is going to be made with ground up sesame seed. In terms of what it looks like, I'll try to show you here. It might be kind of hard to see with the lighting here, but it's got just a brown color to it, so it kind of looks like peanut butter. It is a little more liquidy, and when you buy it, you are going to want to stir it up so that the oil and the fat can kind of come, or sorry, the oil and the other parts of it can kind of come back together. The oil has a tendency to separate from it. If you've ever bought natural peanut butter, it's similar to that. So I'm just going to give it a stir here. Now you can buy this typically in your grocery store. It will either be next to the peanut butters if you have like a grocery store that sells other nut butters like almond butter or sunflower butter, things like that. It'll be right in that section. If your grocery store tends to have a health food section, you may find it there as well with those other unique nut butters. So we're giving it a little stir. We're going to do 1 tablespoon of this. This is a half tablespoon measure that I'm holding here, so I'm actually going to do 2 scoops, which will equal 1 tablespoon. And what this does is it adds a nice creaminess to the hummus. It also adds a good bit of protein. We're adding some healthy fats. So there's a lot of nutrition packed into the tahini. And this stuff lasts for a very, very long time. So if you buy it, it comes in a pretty decent sized container. You'll be able to use it for a long period of time. Just keep it in the refrigerator after you open it, and then make sure to stir it up before using it. So that's tahini there. Again, seems kind of complicated at first, but it's kind of just peanut butter made from those ground up sesame seeds. So with all those ingredients in place, we're just going to go ahead and blend this until it becomes smooth. If you wanted to make a different hummus, like maybe you wanted to add in some chili powder, which would give it some color, give it a little bit of spice. If you wanted to add in some sriracha, there are all sorts of fun flavors you could add to this to kick it up. We're going to keep it plain today, just the garlic and lemon being the main flavor contributors, but I encourage you to experiment at home. So we'll go ahead and put this in. Like I mentioned, if you don't have a food processor and you're using a blender, you may need to stop during the blending process, take a spatula and scoop things down toward those blades. We want to make sure that things are fairly smooth and consistent when all said and done. So bear with me just a moment here. And even with a food processor that I have, I still like to go ahead and take the spatula and do that push down. Things do tend to group around the side, and I just want to make sure that things are nice and even in terms of smoothness. Some people may enjoy a chunkier hummus. It's kind of like if you've ever made guacamole. Some people want it to be chunkier, some people want it smoother. There's definitely some personal preference there. So I'm going to give it just another quick pulse. Awesome. So that is our homemade hummus. It is taken care of. And I can kind of try to take the blade out here and show you what we're working with. So if you've seen hummus before, this pretty much looks just like it. We've just got that in there. Now, if you want to make this in advance, you absolutely can, and you can chill this hummus. I'm just going to set it over here to the side since we're doing everything in one go. So with our hummus prepared, that's going to be the base of our wraps. Let's come back here and get some vegetables going, because of course, our main goal is to make this not only tasty, but very, very nutritious for us as well. So in terms of vegetables, we'll be working with quite a few different kinds today, which I think makes this recipe really fun and very flavorful. We're going to use 2 tomatoes. Ultimately, you're going for about a cup of chopped tomatoes. So if you buy a bigger tomato, you may only need 1. I'm using some smaller Roma tomatoes today, so I've got 2 of them here. We're going to make use of half of an English cucumber. I've cut it in half lengthwise, and I'm going to go through and chop that in just a moment. I've got a 1/4 cup of red or purple onion. I've gone ahead and chopped this in advance because I always tear up when I cut into onions. So I like to do that off camera so I don't make as big of a scene here when I'm doing it live. And then you're going to want 3 to 4 cups of your favorite greens. It could be spinach, it could be arugula, it could be romaine, anything that you enjoy. This is just kind of a mix of a couple different greens that I bought. So I've gone ahead and rinsed them, about 3 to 4 cups of that over here. But let's go ahead and chop these vegetables up. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to make a small little salad. We're going to make a quick little dressing for it, put it on top of the salad, mix it all around, and then use that with our wraps. So we'll go ahead and get started with the cucumber. The cucumber is probably the easiest thing to chop. So all I've done is cut it in half that way. I'm just going to now go in the other direction alongside of it. I've rinsed this, so it is good to go. Always make sure to rinse your produce before you cut into it. Even if you don't intend to eat the skin or the outside of something, any dirt or bacteria that may be on the outside of the vegetable can go into it when you cut into it. So we want to make sure that surface is nice and clean. Now, if you are buying a cucumber and you really like cucumbers, you could definitely put an entire cucumber in here. I split mine into halves since I made 2 batches of this. So we've got our cucumbers chopped up, and just because we're going to run out of real estate on our cutting board, I'm going to go ahead and grab the salad bowl that we'll be combining all these ingredients into. So I'm just going to throw the cucumbers in there. And cucumbers I really like the flavor of cucumbers. I know not everyone's crazy about it, so there are certainly some substitutions we could do in terms of vegetables, but I think the cucumbers add a nice bit of texture, a little crunch whenever you bite into these wraps. And that pairs nicely with the smoothness of some of the other ingredients like the hummus. So let's move to the Roma tomatoes. Now, you can really chop these any way you want. Our goal is just to get them into small bite-sized pieces, so we don't have to be too particular about it. But my usual technique is I've gone ahead and rinsed them. I like to cut a small sliver off of one side of them. And I do this with a lot of vegetables that I cut. The reason for this is it gives me this flat plane so the tomato doesn't rock around while I try to cut it, whereas this guy is, he's like breakdancing over here. So we want to keep this nice and flat, so that's why I make that first cut. Then I'm going to do cuts into it and almost cut all the way through the tomato, about as close as you can get to reaching the cutting board without fully reaching it. And the reason for this is I want to start these slices, but I still want them to be connected a little bit so they're not falling out all over the place. And you can kind of see that if I do a little bit of force, I can pull that apart, but that's not what I want. We've got it cut that way. I'm going to turn it and make perpendicular cuts in the other direction now. And that should achieve a nice little dice for us to put into our wraps. Again, there are a lot of ways you can go about this. Certainly, if you don't have a lot of knife skills or you are kind of in a hurry, you can kind of just slice it up and then run the knife back through like that to make them smaller pieces. That's pretty much up to you. Same thing with the size of your dice. I've got decent length strips here. That's okay. It doesn't have to be super fine, but if you prefer it, you can take more time to do that. So we'll repeat the process on this tomato. Again, I'm going to cut a little sliver off, give me a flat, more stable plane to cut on. Then I'm going to cut most of the way through the tomato. Imagine you're going for like 95% of the way through that tomato. Now, tomatoes are so healthy. I have them in a lot of the cooking demo recipes we do. They're rich in a number of vitamins and minerals, and they're also a source of lycopene, which is an antioxidant that has some cancer-fighting properties. So whenever we're trying to reduce our risk of certain diseases, tomatoes are an excellent food to incorporate to do that. So I'll repeat the process, turning it perpendicular, and now cutting all the way through to get these nice little slices here. And as always, with anything you cut, if you look back at it and you see some big pieces, run that knife through it. You can kind of separate them up and make quick work of any sloppy cuts that you might have made. Now with those 2 pieces that we cut off, I'm just going to go back and real quick just cut them up into smaller pieces because I do want to make use of that delicious part of the tomato as well. So let's grab that salad bowl again and go ahead and scoop our tomatoes right on into it. So cucumbers and tomatoes are good to go here. I mentioned we're using a 1/4 cup of the chopped purple onion or the red onion. We'll go ahead and add that in as well. And then we've got our 3 to 4 cups of your favorite mixed greens, and we're just going to put that right on top of there. So we've got this vegetable medley that we're calling a salad. It doesn't have a lot of flavor right now, but we can fix that. So let me set this over here to the side. Now in a small bowl, I'm just going to use the one that I have my lemon juice in here. Just in a small bowl, we're going to add a couple ingredients to make sort of a dressing that we can add to this. So we're going to use 1 tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. This is going to give it a nice flavor. A lot of dressings use balsamic vinegar or some form of vinegar combined with an oil. So we're using balsamic vinegar and olive oil, pretty classic combination to make our dressing here. So 1 tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. I'm going to do 1 tablespoon of olive oil. We're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper again, give it a little flavor. And then once more, we're going to make use of garlic because it's such a good way to make things tasty. And we'll do another clove or 1/2 teaspoon of the minced garlic. And now all we need to do is just kind of whisk that together. If you want to use a whisk, you can. I'm just going to use a spoon. All we're trying to do is incorporate the balsamic vinegar with the oil, pick up that black pepper and that garlic to make a nice little bit of seasoning. Now, real quick, before we pour that on top of our salad, we're going to add a couple more very flavorful ingredients. We're going to be making use of feta cheese today. Feta cheese is so delicious. It's going to give us some fat. It's going to give us some protein. Mostly, it's going to give us a lot of flavor. But with any cheese, we do want to use it in moderation. It is a saltier food. We don't want to go overboard on it. So we're going to use this crumbled feta here, and we're going to use a 1/4 cup of it to put in our salad. That way we can enjoy that cheesy flavor, but we know that we're not going too far overboard with it. We're keeping our calories in check and finding a nice balance between all of our ingredients. So 1/4 cup of feta cheese. And you really taste that feta cheese at the end of the recipe. It's very, very good, very tasty. And then the last ingredient we're going to add for one more boost of flavor are going to be banana peppers. Now, banana peppers can be kind of a controversial food. I know not everyone is crazy about the flavor. I personally enjoy them and think that they work really, really well in this recipe. You don't taste them that strongly because they're mixing in with a lot of other potent flavors, but it does add a nice little extra dimension to the flavor that we're going to have. If you don't like banana peppers, you can certainly leave them out of this portion of the recipe. What we're going to do is we're going to use about 2 to 3 tablespoons of banana peppers. Now, these are rings. So they're already in a small form, but I'm going to just grab a couple rings and set them on my cutting board. And my goal is not for someone to bite into the wrap and have a big old banana pepper come out, but to have little pieces here and there. So I'm going to grab a couple more because I do enjoy these. And I'm just going to use my knife to chop them into slightly smaller pieces. Nothing too exact in this process. I'm kind of just making a couple cuts, and that looks good to me so that now they're a little bit more bite-sized. So we'll add those banana peppers to our mix over here. All right, so we've got our salad, and we made our little vinaigrette dressing earlier with the olive oil and the balsamic. So we're gonna just pour that on top of everything, and that's gonna help coat all those greens and give them a nice flavor. At this point, using salad tongs or a spoon or whatever you may have nearby, go ahead and just mix that around. Your goal is to, if you see dressing on the side of the bowl, move some leaves into it, have them pick up that flavor so that when you bite into this, you're going to taste the dressing. You're going to have that feta cheese, the tomatoes, the cucumbers, the banana peppers, the onions. There's so much flavor in this, and it's so fresh. I really enjoy eating fresh vegetables like this. It's just delicious. So we've mixed that around a little bit. Now let's kind of put it all together. I'm running out of room here. So I'm going to grab a plate. And the last thing we need to talk about are our wraps. So today I'm using whole wheat tortillas. Nothing too fancy going on here. The idea behind using whole wheat tortillas is that we're getting a little more nutrition out of it. And you can see it says whole wheat here. Whenever we choose 100% whole grain or 100% whole wheat options, so things like brown rice instead of white rice, things like quinoa, doing whole wheat bread over white bread, or in this case, a whole wheat tortilla over a white tortilla, we're doing stuff that's a little better for our bodies. We get extra fiber, extra protein, some extra B vitamins. There's a lot of nutrition that comes from that. So that's why we're making use of the whole grain wrap today. There are other options out there, certainly. Some people like to do spinach wraps. They like to do the tomato basil wraps. What I encourage you to do is to check the nutrition labels on the ones that you're interested in. The sodium levels in different tortillas and wraps can vary a whole lot. So I try to find ones that are a little lower in sodium to help balance my diet out. These are 8-inch tortillas. Certainly you could do bigger ones or smaller ones if you wanted to, but we'll just be making use of this standard 8-inch size today. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate what preparing one of these looks like. So the first thing we'll want to do is we'll want to take that hummus that we made, and we're going to apply about a quarter of what we made because this makes 4 servings. So about 2.5 tablespoons if you want to measure it out. I'm going to use a spatula and just kind of eyeball what a quarter of it looks like and just give a nice even coating of it across that tortilla. Let's get a little more there. So this is going to do a couple things. For one, it adds a lot of nice flavor to our wrap, but it also is going to help all of our vegetables stick together. If you saw me make the black bean queso wraps 2 weeks ago, you heard me talk about how I have a tendency to overfill burritos, wraps, whatever it may be. I try to put so many vegetables in there that I can't get it to close. Hummus kind of acts like a glue that helps keep those vegetables stuck in there so that they don't fall out when I overfill everything that I make. So I'm very appreciative of what hummus brings. So we've got the hummus on there. Let's go ahead and, again, using salad tongs, using a slotted or a spoon or anything like that, scoop in, and I'm just going to try to get a little bit of all the vegetables. I want some cucumbers. I want some of the greens, the tomatoes, everything. Get some banana peppers in there. And again, use about 1/4 of the mixture that you have because this will make 4 servings. At this point, there's really not much left to do other than fold it. I can tell you right now that I overfilled this. I can just tell by looking at it. Typically, you'll want to fold up from the back, fold over from the sides, and then try to roll it up. Now, we might get away with this. It's going to be a little close. So I've got some stuff kind of popping out of the top there. But essentially, that is the process. Let's go ahead and just empty some of that out. And then I'm going to cut into it so you can see all the good stuff that's inside when it explodes out. All right, so these are our Mediterranean wraps with that homemade hummus. When you bite into this, there are so many flavors that hit you. I made this yesterday when I was testing it out and got to eat it for dinner and absolutely loved it. I think balsamic vinegar, the little vinaigrette that we make on the salads, gives all those vegetables a really nice flavor. And then the feta cheese and the banana peppers carry some flavor with them that also kind of coats all the different green leaves. So that's really nice. The homemade hummus, you can taste the tahini, the garlic, the lemon juice. All these different flavors hit your tongue at once, and it makes for a really exciting experience whenever you're eating it. Nutritionally, these are great. One of these wraps, if you make it with an 8-inch tortilla, is going to be just a little under 300 calories and have about 15 grams of protein. So depending on how you want to build your meal, you may want to have one of these and have some items on the side, maybe a piece of fruit to complement it. Or if you are a little more active or looking for more calories, you may do 2 of the wraps, which would come out to be about 600 calories together. If you want to see what that nutrition information looks like and how it can fit into your lifestyle, we are going to be sending out a copy of the recipe with the nutrition information included in there. So everyone will be able to take a look at that and see how they might work it into their day. But all in all, super easy recipe. Let's see what time it is. Oh yeah, so we knocked it out in just over 20 minutes. Really simple to make. These ingredients, the upfront investment, like buying the banana peppers, buying the tahini, costs a couple dollars here to get those. But as you can see, I have a lot of banana peppers left. I have tons of tahini left. So if you enjoy this or you enjoy these ingredients, you'll be able to continue to make things like this over the next several months. I also have a tendency to come back to ingredients that I've used in the demonstration. So I'm sure you'll see tahini again popping up in a couple weeks so that you'll be able to use that in another cooking demonstration recipe. In terms of substitutions, with the hummus, you've got so many options. We made hummus with chickpeas and garbanzo beans, but you can make hummus with black beans, with kidney beans, with pinto beans. Really anything that mashes up like that, that's a bean, will work just fine for making hummus. I will change the flavor and the color of it, but you may like that. I also mentioned adding things like chili pepper, sriracha, all sorts of different flavors of hummuses that you can make out there to change a little bit of how these flavors all work together. In terms of the vegetables that we put into it, we were going for a kind of Mediterranean flair. I think the cucumbers, tomatoes, and greens worked well together, but certainly you could substitute a lot of these out for a lot of different things. I think shredded carrots could be really nice in here, having some of those added in, little pops of orange here and there. You could chop up some bell peppers. Really, the sky's the limit on what kinds of vegetables you want to put in here. When you enjoy this, I do recommend eating it cold. After I made it yesterday, I refrigerated it for a little bit, and I was happy I did because I think the ingredients taste a lot better when chilled. And you can make the 4 wraps that this recipe makes, pop them in the fridge, and they're good for about 3 to 4 days. So great for meal prepping and having stuff laid out for you. I do see we have some questions and comments in the chat here. So let me pop on over here and see. Okay, I see a question. Is there a substitute for garlic? That is a really interesting question. All of the hummus, all the savory hummus flavors that I've made before, and I say savory because there are dessert hummuses out there, all the savory flavors that I've made before do make use of garlic, either garlic powder or minced garlic or fresh garlic. It is a pretty signature component whenever we're making hummus. If you were to remove it, I don't actually have a lot of experience with what that might taste like. I will actually ask the audience if anyone else has experience making hummus without garlic, if you've got ideas for substitutions or things like that, because I'm less familiar with experimenting with that. Certainly, if you left out the garlic, it would not change the consistency or anything. You'd still be able to make hummus. The chickpeas and the tahini would still kind of ground down into that nice, smooth, creamy spread type of texture. I think you'd just be missing some of the flavor. What I would recommend doing is if you take out the garlic, add something back in to bring some flavor. I mentioned chili powder. You could do cumin. You could do sriracha, something to bring in a little kick since we're taking part of it out with the garlic. I would start there and then kind of see what you come up with. All right. Okay. Some comments that it looks tasty and they are excited to try it. Certainly, I encourage everyone to try this one. Of course, I act enthusiastic about all the recipes that I make on these cooking demonstrations, but really, this one hit me a little different. I really, really like these flavors. It's just so bright and fresh tasting, and it's not too heavy either. You feel satisfied, but you don't feel sluggish after eating it, which is something that I definitely like when I'm making a healthy and balanced meal. Right. And I don't see any other questions or comments right now. So if you have additional questions, you can always reach out to me via email, or if you want to email our entire team, we can direct that email to me as well. Speaking of emailing our team, so if anyone is interested in signing up for our weekly newsletter, we do all sorts of events. We've got cooking demonstrations. Tomorrow, we've got a guided meditation session at 12 p.m. Next week, we're going to be doing a virtual office stretch break to get you up and get you moving. We have all sorts of different sessions, and each week we send out an email reminder that'll show you all the different things going on that week. If you're not already getting that newsletter and you're interested, you can email us at edws@gsu.edu, and we'll be sure to get you on that mailing list. So after today's presentation, you're going to get an email that will include a copy of the recipe and the nutrition information, a link to the recording so you can check that out, and then a link to a short survey as well. The survey helps us get feedback and improve the quality of all of our programs. So if you've got ideas, suggestions, we'd love to hear them and incorporate them into what we do. With that being said, I just want to thank everyone for attending the cooking demonstration today. I had a blast finding this recipe, making this one, and I hope that some of you give it a try and eat it because it really is delicious. Again, thank you for attending, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.